Hello friends, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. Hell you what? An intense weekend. Incredibly intense. So intense that we're going to have a look at every Premier League team this weekend on the Fallout. 2 episodes, bumper edition for you to enjoy. So, if your team and your game is not included in this episode, then make sure you're subscribed and make sure you got that notification bell clicked, because then you're set, good to go for your team tomorrow when we have a look at the more of a focus on the top 4 than that one really, but actually the teams down the bottom, teams down the top, were playing each other this weekend. But in this video we're going to be talking about the title race, because the title race is going to the wire. That's right, but it is getting incredibly intense, maybe a little bit too intense. What did we really learn about these guys over the weekend? We're going to have a look at why Arsenal's luck could run out and why Man City have become a different side under Pep this season. We're also going to have a look at why John McGinn is the answer and what Southampton's new style means for their survival. Let us begin now. Absolutely unbelievable game of football, one of many. And oh, by the way, I did a video on the Liverpool Man United 7-0 game as well, so go check that one out. That was already on the channel. But this game was pretty good as well. Arsenal 3, Bournemouth 2, an XG of 2.17 to 1.33. And we begin with the most Barclays moment of the week, where Reiss Nelson scored an absolute pile driver in the 97th minute. It's amazing how it just sort of went, just sort of parted for him, didn't it, against Bournemouth. Poor Bournemouth. Stop doing that. Stop going 2-0 up and not getting a point. It's unbelievable, and it's probably going to cost them, but there are positives for Bournemouth, so stick around, Bournemouth fans. Hang in there, okay? But they did get their hearts broken after what was an incredible game of football. Arsenal were their usual selves in many ways as they imposed themselves onto Bournemouth. They had 80% possession and a total of 31 shots. The average positions are absolutely hilarious in terms of how dominant Arsenal were. But we have to read between the lines in this match, because there are actually some really interesting takeaways and some assumptions that we can make. So firstly, Bournemouth showed that there are ways of exploiting Arsenal in transition. They created 3 big chances, all of which were fast-paced, direct moves. I think this is a great way for Bournemouth to keep moving forwards. Philip Billing showed how having a midfield runner can be a source of joy against Arsenal, and how having that third man run can be hard to pick up in transition, in particular against teams that kind of have that leftover defence where you've just got your 2 centre-backs and 2 full-backs either high up or quite centrally as well, certainly not on the same line as the back line. Billing scored the opening goal, but also created a big chance for Ouattara. The screenshot here shows how his movement, it was just really problematic for Saliba in particular, because he wasn't able to then engage on Solanke. And for Arsenal, I think they were extraordinarily blessed to have a player like Reiss Nelson on the bench, actually. And the reason I say this is not because of overall quality of him, although he is sort of gently creeping there, and his output's been solid for Arsenal, especially from off the bench, obviously not as a regular starter. But the reason I'm saying this is because his profile allowed Arsenal to change the game. And without him to call on, they might have lost this game. It's not about his goal. I think actually what was more impressive was, I mean, only just about more impressive, it was a pretty impressive goal, wasn't it, was what he offered on the ball far more. Now, look at his heat maps here, because it tells us a lot. Now, they look really similar for the untrained eye, but the subtle change is so important, because Smith Rowe and Nelson played on the left, but they went about their job and go about their jobs completely different. Smith Rowe, he looked to drift inside. When he received the ball in wide positions, he looked to cut in, sort of like a Jack Grealish and how he does that role for Man City. Whereas Reiss Nelson, he would opt to go to the byline that little bit more and be more direct in creation. And because of this directness, it allowed him to take advantage of Adam Smith, who didn't seem too comfortable defending against his pace. And Nelson was only on the pitch for 21 minutes, but in that time, he created a goal, he scored a goal, and he registered 3 key passes. This all came from him being able to be direct. And I use that word particularly, able to be direct and take his man on, because in the modern game, there's a lot of players that want to drift inside all the time, and to have that person that can be that little bit direct and to keep that width, I think is a real blessing in the Premier League these days, and something that's becoming more and more an asset. So something to keep an eye on, I guess. The big question, of course, can Arsenal sustain this though? You know, is being reliant on youth players sustainable for the rest of the season, especially with the Europa League as well? Now, I know that, you know, that is the B side of this, but they are still going to have to put out a team. And both Trossard and Smith Rowe went off injured in this game. If their injuries are serious, it means the squad is getting a bit thin overall. It's worth keeping in mind that the average age of this starting lineup was already 24.6 years of age, with only one starting player being over the age of 25. Is this a factor in the title race? I think you could argue that after Reece Nelson, there's not too many others on the bench at the moment in which you can look to in these kind of situations, whereas Man City are able to bring on a World Cup winner in Julian Alvarez if things aren't going their way. There's also the argument, especially with a young squad that hasn't won the league before, that is the emotion that's being shown here. And again, you can sort of roll your eyes at look, they're acting like they've won the league. Well, that's an amazing win in the 97th minute. And I think it's because it's off the back of the Aston Villa game. I think you're feeling like, oh, hang on, you need to kind of keep it together here. But what I think is of use for Arsenal, as I've said previously on the fallout, is they are able to sort of lean on the style of play that they have enforced here, that, trusting the process Arteta's put together. And that makes it significantly easier when they are at the sort of moment of over-arousal. And you guys will hopefully know what I mean by that. But if you're, in a game when you just kind of go that little bit too far and you want it a little bit too much, that can make you make bad choices. But I think what is good here is you've got a lot of players who have actually, despite being young, played a lot of games and are staying on the right side of it. And what is also important is that, and you guys will know, we're going to all say it together. If you've watched my content over the years, you will know what I'm about to say is teams that win leagues win games late. Teams that go up win games late. Teams that go down concede goals late. And that's a problem for both these sides. But in particular, when we're talking about Arsenal, you can't stay away from that, because when it does get tight, they won't panic. They will keep going. And that is huge. It's going to be interesting to see which side of the scales is heavier. That youth and the emotion, is it going to get too much? Are they going to get jaded by that? Are they going to get, not jaded, but just over-aroused and tired and petulant in any way? Or is that style of play so embedded and so fluent and will have such speed, along with the belief that they clearly have now, will that be strong enough to see them over the line? Time's going to tell. Man City 2, Newcastle 0. The XG was 1.34 for Man City, 0.43 for Newcastle. And speaking of Man City and the title race, they swept aside Newcastle with 2 excellent goals at the Etihad. I thought they started the game really, really well. But I would say that when it comes to the XG part of it, it didn't really do justice to Newcastle and how they performed, because I think they had some moments. So if we start with Man City, they actually moved from a 3-4-2-1 that people have been sort of uncertain about, but it is something that's, a weapon in their arsenal, to a 4-2-3-1 for this game, which gave them more defensive solidity in transitions due to having 4 natural defenders on the pitch, which was an uncharacteristic flat-back 4 from Pep Guardiola. We just haven't seen that too much. I think the thought process was that they had to be ready and wary of limiting the space for Almiron and Gordon, and St. Maximin when he came on as well, and this worked really, really well in that regard, as Almiron and Gordon were limited to zero key passes between them, as well as only completing 1 dribble between the two of them. I thought in particular Anthony Gordon looked, I don't know if it's just Kyle Walker is just miles ahead of him, but Anthony Gordon just looked a little bit out of his depth in this one for someone that you're wanting to come on and do something for you. Maybe a bit harsh on a young player who's just started out, but that's just what I saw. The 4-2-3-1 also gave Kevin De Bruyne a lot of freedom due to starting as a central 10. Despite starting centrally, KDB actually moved to the left a lot, which you don't actually see that much. Often he would be more so on the right sort of half space, so he can do that gorgeous cross that he always does. But he did pop up on that left-hand side quite a few times throughout the match, and it worked well to an extent. Now, KDB made 3 key passes as well as completing 2 out of his 2 dribbles. And on the counter-attack, he seemed to stay to that left-hand side as well. But he did attempt 7 crosses, with only 1 of them meeting its intended target. And so him not being on the right-hand side, instead being on the left-hand side, from a sort of crossing point of view, which has been a real weapon for Man City this year, that didn't work, really. Now, the reasoning for asking him to take up a position on the left was down to 2 things, I think. Firstly, I think Pep feels that Grealish is a player who kind of needs someone with him to sort of possibly freeze the opposition and to take maybe 2 bodies out of the game. And that's always been a thing that Man City have generally done. A lot of teams actually focus down that left-hand side. Real Madrid, a great example of it as well, although they do it in a different way. The other reason is to make sure that Ake doesn't get caught in possession. Ake is a good defender, but I think he lacks that technical ability of Cancelo. I think that's a fair thing to say. And we can see here from the passing networks that a lot of the Man City play came down that left, and therefore it became natural for KDB to position himself there so he could get on the ball. And with De Bruyne moving to a 10 this season instead of an 8 as part of a 3-man midfield, what I would say, tentatively, and I mean very gently as well, is that could this be the first signs of his regression as a player, sort of not as all action as he previously was, and trying to kind of get the best out of him when you can. Now, he's still obviously world class. He is still the guy they lean on, but is the dip coming? I do wonder. He's obviously not getting any younger. And I have noticed it a little bit in terms of how Pep has looked to use him. He made 24 accurate passes against Newcastle, but his average for the last 5 seasons has been over 47 per game. Is he adapting to a new system of Pep, or is he becoming that little bit less effective? Man City fans, you guys watch him more than I do, so let me know how you feel about that. Is that offensive? Or do you think there's something in it? Because last season, KDB was averaging 73.4 touches per game. This season, it's down to 66.4, which is his lowest since signing for Man City. And against Newcastle, he had 52 touches. Man City are getting less possession recently, to be fair. So that could be the reason his output has been lower this season. Or again, it could be those first signs of regression. Let me know. On to Newcastle. They only mustered 0.43 XG in the 90, but that was a really unfair stat, to be fair to them. In particular, from this moment, Joe Linton didn't even register a shot from this moment here, and if he does get the shot off, that's going to be worth about 0.4 XG, so that would have highlighted that it's a tighter game than it suggests when it comes to that. Callum Wilson also miscued a shot that you would expect him to score. I think the thing to remember here with Newcastle, and this is a theme for this episode, and I kind of spoke about it on the Fallout yesterday when I was talking about Man United and Liverpool, is the truth in the middle. Newcastle were running hot and you've got to enjoy it, but those players have calmed down a little bit. Now, they're starting to kind of snatch a little bit, but they just need 1 or 2 goals and then things will be absolutely fine. Where are they going to finish? Will it be in the Champions League places? That feels like a little bit too hot, doesn't it? Are they going to be finishing 10th, 11th? No, I think that feels a little bit cold. So I think Newcastle will find their feet. They're still defensively very strong. I thought even for the second goal, really unlucky. Trippier does give the ball away, but he kind of works back, makes a great tackle, but plays it straight to Haaland, I think, who plays it to Silva, who puts in an unbelievable finish. So some difficult moments, and not a game to truly judge yourself on is Man City away. But Newcastle United, I think they just need to keep going with what they've got and get that first goal, because they do need to score some more goals, because I think it's only 3 in 2023, and that's not enough if you do want to get into Europe, which would be, I think, that middling truth of what Newcastle want this year. Aston Villa 1, Palace 0, XG of 1.2 to 0.17 for Palace. And even though this was a 1-0, there are still quite a few interesting things to unpack from this one, starting off with Crystal Palace, because you've got to start getting a little bit worried. Some of the Palace fans did say that this could be the case, and yeah, they're on a bit of a tricky run now, because their biggest problem seems to be that they can't buy a goal at the minute. Palace haven't scored more than once in a match since December. That was a 2-0 win against Bournemouth. That was also their last win, and they're currently on a 9-match run without a win, and it all stems from that lack of chance creation and the ability to put it away as well. The starting 11 on paper looks really good and should be adequate in chance creation, but the problem for them is that they have too many players occupying similar positions and not enough threat centrally. Ayew, Elise, Eze and Zaha, they all started this game and they were all on top of each other. You can see it here frequently during the game. The average position maps give us an insight, but the most damning evidence is their heat maps. Ayew and Elise are almost identical, while Zaha's and Eze's are also really kind of similar. And the problem is that they want to get all of these players into the team. And I think we want to see most of these players, but they can't figure out the right way of doing it. And without that backboard as a focal point, it means that all of the players aren't able to do what they're good at, which is create goals, which I know sounds ironic because those players are good to go. And again, on paper, it looks good. But without that focal point, they can't do what they want to. It reminds me a little bit of, say Emil Heskey. When you think of the golden generation, Emil Heskey played such a key part. Again, different time, playing 4-4-2, whatever. But he offered so much. And I think even with Mateta, Teke, those kind of players have been of use despite the goals not being there. And yeah, it's starting to get a little bit worrying for Crystal Palace. When it comes to Villa, I thought they were generally very good and stuck to their game plan well, and they executed it superbly. John McGinn was the standout for Villa. His role on the right was crucial in how Villa won the game. McGinn was absolutely written off. And I do want to take a second because I messaged anyone who watches the channel knows Catherine is one of the key people when it comes to this channel and allowing it to run smoothly. She's an Aston Villa fan. And I had to message her because I saw it all over Twitter. And just to caveat, this isn't at Aston Villa, although it is at Aston Villa. All fans are doing this on Twitter. And I'm getting a little bit bored of it. It's the sort of like dehumanizing, you are scum, like nature of it. And John McGinn is the perfect example. Villa fans, some Villa fans, were desperate for him out. He was scum. He was literally scum. Seriously. And now all of a sudden everyone's going, it's his mentality I like. Well, hang on, he was the same guy before. He was the same bloke before. And when you're all hammering Rashford or Mount or McGinn or whoever it's going to be next, just think for a second. Just like, could this guy come back? And is he just in a bad bit of form, or does he just need that little bit of support? Maybe I'm going over the top of this, but it's just got me a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to say it. Because as I say, McGinn was completely written off by Villa fans not long ago. And this isn't at Villa fans, just to be clear. But he's been given that second chance. Second chance. I think he was always going to be part of Emery's plans. And he's grabbed it with both hands. I think mostly, obviously, the upturn in form is down to those tactics from Emery. His role on the sort of inside right was important because it gave Villa stability as a unit, but it also means that Matty Cash is able to sort of use him as a wall. A bit similar to like we've spoken about when Chelsea have done it over the years, using their kind of wing backs to sort of work their way up the pitch and play those little passes off at him and utilise 1-2s. And this is where the goal came from, and without McGinn, it wouldn't have happened. McGinn had a 95% pass accuracy. He made 2 successful long balls. He got into good offensive and defensive positions throughout the game and was extremely tidy. Well done, John. Down to the bottom of the table, Southampton 1, Leicester City 0. Huge result for Southampton. Leicester City, be careful now. Be careful. One must beware hubris. You're a little bit soft, aren't you? Great victory for Southampton. Keeping themselves in it. They are hanging in there. Bloody good luck to them. It's going to be an unbelievable relegation battle. And we're going to have to do that video, aren't we, where we try and predict it. And it's going to be horrible. The XG 1.38 to 1.93 for Leicester. Another very good 1-0 for Southampton, but more so just a huge result for Southampton, who looked like they found the most effective way of playing under caretaker manager Ruben Selles. Southampton, they were direct in this match, but not in a sort of sense of hoofing it forward, more so in the sense that they sort of played quickly, vertical football into their forwards, and they looked to structure their attacks quickly to be able to make the most out of the turnovers from Leicester. The energy, I thought the intensity from Southampton was clear to see in the opening stages of the match. Southampton created 1.31 XG in the first half alone, and they had 7 shots before the 30th minute, most of which came from these sort of direct scenarios that I'm talking about. I want to focus on one player in particular who I thought was excellent in allowing Southampton to play in this fashion, Che Adams. His assist for the goal says it all, really, because he, on a few occasions, actually sort of peeled off to the right and became an option for progressive passes. James Ward-Prowse was able to make 5 progressive passes in the game, and a large part of that was due to Che Adams making himself the option right in front of him. Adams was on the end of 4 progressive passes, and every time he made use of the ball, he didn't hold on to it for too long, knew what he was going to do, and looked to play that ball quickly. And I thought it was just good, efficient hold-up play that he showed here, which is important when you're trying to play direct but with structure, because it doesn't allow the opposition to sort of set themselves. Carlos Alcaraz was also very busy. Looks like the epitome of just a South American baller, doesn't he? Pretty much injuring himself as he scored his goal. For Leicester City, ultimately, they wasted all their chances, despite James Maddison making 4 key passes, the main man again, and creating 2 big chances. Iheanacho just continues to gently frustrate, and Harry Souttar both missed big chances, and it ultimately meant that they came away with a loss. Leicester played well, but they couldn't cope with the early onslaught from Southampton. They couldn't make their way back into the game. And again, it's another one where it is so tight down there. Leicester City, again, should be all right, but need to start turning it on again. After a couple of positive results, they're now getting themselves sucked back into it, and Southampton did exactly what they need to do, win their home games. So well done to the Saints. Man United fans, mute for a second, but actually stick with me, Man United fans, because I think you'll want to hear this, but you won't want to hear this next sentence. Liverpool 7, Man United 0. Liverpool 7. 7. 7. 7.